The Maplewood neighborhood in the suburbs of Columbus, Ohio comes alive in the evenings with the sounds of children playing and lawnmowers running. Linda Harris had spent 10 years in this quiet middle-class community. She worked 3 days a week as a cashier at the local supermarket. While she sometimes felt like working full-time, her desire to properly support her 10-year-old son Ethan's school life took priority. Her husband Mark worked at an insurance company downtown. In the early days of their marriage, he had cherished time with his family, but lately he'd been coming home later and later due to work obligations. Linda found herself reheating dinner and waiting longer for Mark's return. He used to get home around 7, but now it wasn't unusual for him to arrive after 9. "Welcome home, honey," Linda would say as she heard Mark taking off his shoes at the front door, but she often felt conflicted. Seeing his tired expression, she felt torn between wanting to understand how hard his work was and wishing he could make a little more time for the family. Mark was a kind husband and father, but lately their conversations at home weren't as lively as they used to be. Meanwhile, their son Ethan was an active 4th grader who preferred telling his mother about his day rather than doing homework when he got home from school. At Lincoln Elementary, he was friends with classmates named Jacob, Michael, and Emily. He was particularly close to Jacob, whose desk was next to his, and they often played soccer together during recess. "Mom, Jacob brought this amazing card game to school today. Can I go to his house to play sometime?" Ethan asked his mother while working on his math homework. "Of course, sweetie. But first I need to talk to Jacob's mother," Linda replied. She liked to stay informed about her son's friendships. She always made it a point to contact the parents whenever he made new friends. Ethan's teacher, Mrs. Miller, was a young woman in only her 2nd year of teaching. At parent conferences, she spoke enthusiastically about the children and had creative approaches to homework that impressed Linda. However, she was slightly concerned when Ethan recently mentioned that Mrs. Miller sometimes talks on the phone. She thought it was unusual for a teacher to take personal calls during class, but figured it might be an emergency and tried not to think too much about it. At dinner time, the 3 of them would gather around the dining table. Mark had started looking at his smartphone more often during meals, and while Linda assumed it was work emails, she wished he would focus more on family time. Ethan continued chattering about school events, but seemed to notice his father's lack of response. "Dad, will you come to my school event?" Ethan asked hopefully. Mark looked up and smiled. "Of course. Just tell me when it is." In moments like these, Mark seemed to return to being the kind father he used to be. While Linda felt relieved, sometimes his kindness seemed superficial. She couldn't shake the anxiety that something deep in her husband's heart was beginning to change. At night, after Ethan finished his homework and went to bed.
"Can you imagine making $10,000 a month just from YouTube, all from home? That's exactly what I did with Reddit Stories. No face, no voice. Check the link in the description if you're curious."
Linda would sit alone in the living room, enjoying the quiet time. Mark was often at his computer in the study, and their time together as a couple had become shorter than before. She understood that marriages have their ups and downs, but lately she felt an inexplicable uneasiness about these changes. The 2nd week of October, Ethan came home from school in an excited state. As usual, he threw his backpack by the front door and ran to the kitchen where Linda was preparing dinner. "Mom, I have amazing news." Ethan's eyes were shining. "Next Friday, our whole class is having a gift exchange event." Linda turned around, drying her hands. "A gift exchange? What kind of event is it?" "We draw names to decide who to give presents to, and what you get is a surprise until the day of the event," Ethan continued excitedly. "Mrs. Miller says it's a special activity to strengthen friendships." That evening, Linda pulled the school notice from Ethan's backpack. The paper titled, "Gift Exchange Event to Deepen Friendship," indeed contained exactly what Ethan had described. It stated that presents should cost no more than $10, partners would be chosen by drawing names on the day of the event, and participation by all students was expected. As Linda read the notice, she felt slightly uneasy. Usually school events require detailed explanations and consent forms for parents, but this notice seemed too brief. However, seeing how excited her son was, she reconsidered that maybe she was being overly concerned about small details. The next evening, Mark came home unusually early. Looking at the clock, it wasn't even 7 yet. Linda was surprised but pleased, thinking they could have dinner together as a family for the first time in a while. "Welcome home, you're early today," Linda greeted him, and Mark smiled as he placed his hand on her shoulder. "I'm sorry I haven't been spending much time with the family lately. I arranged to come home early today." That night, Mark was more helpful with household chores than usual and even helped Ethan with his homework. While Linda welcomed her husband's change, she wondered why he had suddenly started acting this way. It wasn't their anniversary or any special occasion. Still, she decided to simply appreciate having family time back. Ethan seemed happy to have regained his father's attention. "Dad, will you listen to me talk about the school gift exchange event?" "Of course. What kind of presents do you think you'll get?" Mark sat next to his son and listened seriously. "That's what makes it interesting, not knowing. But I hope I can exchange presents with Jacob." Mark looked at Linda and smiled. "Our son is really blessed with good friends." That weekend, Mark devoted himself to family activities. On Saturday, the three of them went to the shopping mall together and picked out a gift for Ethan's exchange event. On Sunday, they played catch at the nearby park, and in the evening, they had dinner at Linda's favorite Italian restaurant. While Linda was puzzled by her husband's sudden change, she wanted to treasure this time. However, deep down, her uneasiness didn't disappear. Mark's kindness felt like he was trying to make up for something. His smile looked the same as before, but somehow seemed artificial. Monday morning, after dropping Ethan off at school, Linda headed to her shift at the supermarket. Her colleague Betty, a veteran cashier in her 50s, was like a confidant to Linda. "My husband's been acting strange lately," Linda confided to Betty during their break. "He suddenly became kind and started doing family activities." Betty nodded with an experienced expression. "Isn't that a good thing? Men sometimes have moments of reflection." "I suppose, but something feels off. It's like he's hiding something." "Don't overthink it too much. Since you're getting more family time, why not just be happy about it?" Betty's words made sense, but Linda's anxiety didn't completely disappear. Tuesday night, Mark came home late again. When Linda asked why, he explained, "A big project is getting underway. I might be busy for a while." Gone was the weekend kindness. He ate his meal with a tired expression and quickly retreated to his study. Wednesday, when Ethan came home from school, he began talking in more detail about the gift exchange event. "Mrs. Miller says this event has special meaning. It's not just about friendship bonds, it'll be an important memory even when we're adults." As Linda listened to her son, she felt uneasy about Mrs. Miller's choice of words. Wasn't the phrase, "important memory even when we're adults," a bit dramatic for fourth graders? "So, what kind of present did Jacob say he's preparing?" "That's a secret. But he said it's something really special. I want to surprise Jacob too, so I prepared a really good present." Thursday night, Linda waited for Mark's return in the bedroom. The clock had passed 10, but he still wasn't home. She sent a message to his cell phone but got no reply. When he finally came home after 11, Mark explained that the client dinner ran long, but he didn't smell of alcohol. "You've really been busy lately," Linda said with concern. "Yes, I have. But I think things will calm down next weekend. I'll make time for the family then." Mark gave a tired smile. Friday arrived, the day of the gift exchange event. Ethan was excited from morning and headed to school after barely touching his breakfast. As Linda saw her son off, she somehow had a bad feeling. She couldn't explain why, but anxiety had settled in her chest. At 3 in the afternoon, Ethan came home from school as scheduled. However, his expression seemed somehow complicated. How was the event? Linda peered at her son's face. It was fun. But I didn't get paired with Jacob in the drawing. Ethan looked a little disappointed. But Jacob gave me a present anyway. Really? What kind of present? It's in my backpack. I'll show you later. With that, Ethan headed to his room to start his homework. That night, Mark was late coming home again. Linda sat alone in the living room, reflecting on the day's events. Her son's subtle reaction, her husband's unstable behavior, and the inexplicable uneasiness, it might all be coincidental, but she couldn't shake the feeling that these were signs of some major change to come. Around 10 o'clock, Mark finally came home. He looked exhausted and after briefly greeting Linda, went upstairs to shower. Saturday morning, Linda was cleaning Ethan's room. As her weekend routine, she would tidy up her son's messy room and collect dirty clothes for the laundry basket. When she went to put away the backpack beside his bed, she noticed the zipper was half open. "Ethan, can you empty out your backpack?" Linda called to her son downstairs. "I'm watching TV right now, so you do it, Mom," came the reply. Linda sighed lightly and opened the backpack. Mixed in with the usual school supplies, textbooks, notebooks, pencil case, she could see something small at the bottom. It was a palm-sized owl mascot in dark brown. The owl was extremely well crafted, with even the texture of feathers carefully reproduced. Its large amber eyes looked as lifelike as a real bird's. Linda picked it up and examined it closely. It seemed too well made for a store-bought toy. It had a good weight to it and seemed to have something stuffed inside. "Ethan, what's this?" Linda came downstairs holding the owl mascot. Her son was watching an anime on the sofa but turned around at his mother's voice. When he saw the owl, his face lit up. "Oh, that's the present Jacob gave me. I forgot to show you yesterday." "From Jacob? But yesterday you said you didn't get paired with him in the exchange." "Right, it's not an official present. Jacob said, I want to give this especially to you. He said it's a sign of friendship." Ethan explained happily. Linda looked at the owl more closely again. It was certainly beautifully made, but seemed a bit expensive for a 10-year-old to give as a friend's present. Does Jacob's mother know about giving such an expensive-looking gift? "I don't know, but Jacob said, this is a special owl that protects whoever has it." "Cool, isn't it?" Linda smiled and returned the owl to her son. "It's a lovely present. But take good care of it." That afternoon, Linda went grocery shopping with Mark. Unusually, her husband had offered to come along. In the car, Linda talked about Ethan's present. "My son got this very detailed owl mascot from his friend. It looks a bit expensive, so maybe I should visit the other family to thank them." Mark answered while gripping the steering wheel. "It's just kids exchanging presents, right? Maybe it's better not to make a big deal of it. You might make the other family feel awkward." "Maybe, but as a matter of courtesy." "Linda, you sometimes overthink things. If our son is happy to get a present from his friend, that's all that matters." There was an unusual firmness in Mark's words. Linda felt uneasy but avoided further discussion. That evening, while the family of 3 had dinner, Ethan talked in more detail about the owl mascot. "Jacob says this owl has special powers at night. So it's good to keep it in the bedroom." "What kind of special powers?" Linda showed interest. "It protects you from bad dreams. And it always watches over whoever has it." Mark continued eating while saying, "That's childlike imagination. But you have to treasure your friend's feelings." That night, Ethan indeed took the owl mascot to his bedroom. When Linda went to say goodnight, she saw the owl carefully placed on the bedside table. "It really is a beautiful owl." Linda was impressed again. Under the room's light, the owl's eyes seemed to shine even more brightly. Jacob is my best friend. So I'm going to take really good care of this present, Ethan said contentedly. Linda gave her son a goodnight kiss, turned off the lights, and closed the door. Walking down the hallway, she couldn't get the owl's amber eyes out of her head. They were so realistic that she felt like she was actually being watched. Late at night, Linda woke up feeling thirsty. Looking at the clock, it was past 2 in the morning. Mark was sleeping deeply beside her. Linda quietly got out of bed and went downstairs to the kitchen for water. While going down the stairs, she noticed a thin light leaking through the gap under Ethan's door. Thinking her son had left the light on while sleeping, she decided to peek into his room. When she quietly opened the door, the room was indeed dark. However, she could see the owl mascot on the bedside table faintly glowing. At first she thought it was streetlight coming through the window and reflecting, but looking carefully, the owl itself was clearly emitting light. Linda gasped. The amber eyes were flickering faintly like a real living creature. Even more surprising, she could see a pale blue light leaking from the owl's chest area. Her heart pounded violently. This wasn't an ordinary mascot. Some kind of electronic device must be built into it. But why would a 10-year-old's friend have such a high-tech toy? Linda entered the room and picked up the owl. When she touched it, she could indeed feel something mechanical inside. She could also feel small vibrations. This wasn't just a mascot, it was some kind of functional device. Fear ran down her spine. Why was such a thing in her son's room? Who exactly was this friend named Jacob? And why had Mark tried to avoid investigating this matter deeply? Linda's instincts were sounding an alarm. This owl was dangerous. To protect her son, she had to dispose of it immediately. Without hesitation, she gripped the owl and headed to the living room downstairs. Linda stared at the owl once more. It was beautifully made, but had an eerie quality she couldn't identify. These amber eyes might have been monitoring her son and her family. "I'm sorry, but we can't keep this in our house," Linda whispered and threw the owl into the fireplace flames. The mascot burst into flames vigorously. However, unlike the sound of ordinary fabric burning, she heard sounds of something popping and metal being heated. From inside the flames, small sparks scattered from within the owl, and she could clearly hear the sound of electronic components burning. Linda's guess was correct. This wasn't just a mascot. Some kind of electronic device, probably a listening device or surveillance equipment, had been hidden inside. Linda sat in front of the fireplace until the flames died down. While telling herself this was an action to protect her family, she wondered how she would explain to her son tomorrow. And more than anything, she needed to know the truth behind this incident. Linda couldn't sleep until dawn. The owl's amber eyes were still burned into her mind. Sunday morning, Linda carefully examined inside the fireplace. In the ashes, she found small metal fragments and partially melted plastic pieces. Among them was a small green fragment that was clearly part of an electronic circuit board. Her guess hadn't been wrong. That owl mascot had definitely contained some kind of electronic device. When Ethan came downstairs for breakfast, Linda carefully spoke to her son. "Ethan, I went to look at the owl mascot last night, but I couldn't find it. Do you remember where you put it?" Her son looked confused. "I put it on the bedside table. I definitely put it there. Shall we look for it together again?" The two of them searched Ethan's room thoroughly, but naturally the owl wasn't found. Her son gradually became anxious. "Mom, my precious present is gone. What am I going to tell Jacob?" Linda placed her hand on her son's shoulder. "Don't worry. We'll find it. By the way, can you tell me more details about Jacob? What kind of boy is he?" "Jacob is the same age as me, but he knows a lot of things. He said his mother teaches him all kinds of stuff. And sometimes his mother comes to pick him up from school. She's a really pretty lady." "Do you know his mother's name?" I think he called her Sarah. Jacob said, "My mom has a special job." Linda's wariness increased in her heart. "What kind of special job do you think?" "I don't know, but he said it's computer work. They have lots and lots of computers at home." That afternoon, Linda looked up Jacob's home address in the school directory. Fortunately, the PTA directory included parent contact information. Jacob Martin's mother was listed as Sarah Martin, and the address was in a new subdivision about 15 minutes by car from the Maplewood neighborhood. In the evening, Linda decided to visit that address. She only told Mark she was visiting a friend. The Martin house was a newly built single-family home with a very orderly exterior. However, all the windows had blinds drawn, making it impossible to see inside. Linda rang the doorbell. After a few minutes, the door opened. The woman who appeared was indeed beautiful as Ethan had said. However, her expression showed wariness. "Are you Sarah Martin?" "I'm Linda, Ethan Harris's mother." The woman's face tensed for a moment. "Oh, yes. You're the mother of Jacob's friend. What can I do for you?" "My son received a lovely present from Jacob, and I came to express my thanks. Also, I was hoping to hear a little about the gift exchange event." Sarah was clearly agitated. "Gift exchange event? I'm sorry, but I haven't heard about such a thing from Jacob." "I see. It was an event that the whole class participated in at school." "I'm sorry, but Jacob was absent from school on Friday due to illness. So he couldn't have participated in such an event." Linda's blood drained. Ethan had definitely said he got a present from Jacob on Friday. But if Jacob was absent from school, that story didn't make sense. "But my son said he got an owl mascot from Jacob." "An owl mascot?" Sarah's voice went high. "I'm sorry, but I have no memory of giving such a present." "And Jacob is..." Sarah started to speak but closed her mouth. Then she continued apologetically. "Actually, I don't have a son named Jacob. I don't have any children." Linda was stunned. "But my son definitely talked about his friend Jacob. You might be confusing me with someone else. I am Sarah Martin, but I'm not the mother of the Jacob your child mentioned." Linda checked the address in confusion, but it was definitely the address listed in the PTA directory. However, the woman in front of her said she had no children. "I'm sorry. There seems to have been some mistake." Linda bowed her head. In the car on the way home, Linda tried to organize the situation. The friend named Jacob that her son had talked about might not exist. Then who had given him that owl mascot? When she arrived home, Ethan was doing homework. Linda carefully asked her son. "Ethan, when was the last time you talked to Jacob?" "During the gift exchange event on Friday. That's when I got the owl." But according to Jacob's mother, Jacob was absent from school on Friday. Ethan looked confused. "That can't be right. He was definitely there. And I got the present too." "Ethan, answer honestly. Is there really a friend named Jacob? Or did you get the present from someone else?" Her son was silent for a long time. Then he finally spoke. "Actually, Mrs. Miller gave me the owl." Linda's heart nearly stopped. "Mrs. Miller? Why would the teacher?" "The teacher called me over and said, 'This is a special present. But keep it secret from your father and mother.' So I said I got it from Jacob." "Why did it have to be kept secret?" "The teacher said, adults sometimes don't understand children's special friendships." "But was it really wrong?" Linda hugged her son. "You didn't do anything wrong. But why would the teacher do such a thing?" Just then, she heard the sound of the front door opening. Mark had come home. His footsteps echoed in the hallway, and she could hear him approaching the living room. "Linda, I'm home." Mark's voice could be heard. However, there was an unusual tension in his voice. Linda whispered to her son, "Ethan, don't tell anyone about what we just talked about. Promise me." "Okay, Mom." Mark entered the living room. His expression was harder than usual, and she could see something like anxiety. "Where did you go today?" "Just to a friend's place," Linda answered vaguely. "I see." Mark started to say something but stopped. Then he looked at Ethan and smiled. "Son, what happened to the present you got from your friend? Are you taking good care of it?" Ethan looked at his mother before answering. "Yes, I'm taking good care of it." That night, after Mark shut himself in his study, Linda organized the situation by herself. Why had Mrs. Miller given her son a listening device? And why did Mark show unnatural interest in this matter? All the mysteries seemed to be converging on one terrifying possibility. Monday morning, after dropping her son off at school, Linda went directly to the principal's office. Principal James looked surprised as he welcomed Linda. "Mrs. Harris, what brings you here? Is there some emergency?" Linda calmly explained the situation. She reported in detail that her son had received a mascot with electronic devices from his homeroom teacher Mrs. Miller, that he had been instructed to keep it secret, and that when she burned it in the fireplace, there were definitely electronic components inside. The principal's face turned pale. "This is a very serious matter. Let's call Mrs. Miller right away." 30 minutes later, Mrs. Miller was called to the principal's office. The young teacher in her late 20s was clearly agitated when she saw Linda. "Mrs. Miller, Mrs. Harris has made a serious allegation. Please explain about giving Ethan a listening device." Mrs. Miller initially tried to deny it, but when Linda showed her photographs of the burned electronic components, she gave up and began to speak. "I had a personal relationship with Mark Harris. He asked me to find out about the home situation, and I just..." Her voice was shaking. "He said he was considering divorce and wanted evidence that would be favorable in a custody battle." Linda asked calmly, "What kind of relationship do you have with my husband?" "We've been dating for 6 months. He said things weren't going well with his wife." The principal immediately called the police. Mrs. Miller's inappropriate conduct toward a child, privacy invasion, and abuse of authority due to an affair were clearly criminal acts. That evening, when Mark came home, Linda and a police officer were waiting in the living room. Mark's face turned completely pale. "Mark Harris, you need to be questioned regarding charges of wiretapping," the officer announced. The subsequent developments were swift. Mark initially denied everything, but faced with Mrs. Miller's testimony and evidence, he had to admit to the affair and home surveillance. He had been trying to gather evidence of Linda as a bad mother to gain an advantage in custody. Mrs. Miller had her teaching license revoked and was criminally charged for inappropriate conduct toward a child. Mark was also prosecuted as an accomplice and fired from his company. The divorce proceedings went more smoothly than expected. With Mark's affair and illegal activities revealed, there was no objection to Linda gaining custody. Alimony and child support payments were also agreed upon under relatively good terms due to Mark's guilt. 6 months later, Linda and Ethan had started a new life in a new apartment. Ethan made new friends at his new school and seemed brighter than before. "Mom, my new homeroom teacher is really nice," Ethan reported at dinner. "She doesn't give weird presents or tell me to keep secrets." Linda smiled at her son's words. "That's how it should be. Adults shouldn't force children to keep secrets." "Mom, I'm glad you burned that owl back then. It was creepy." One Sunday afternoon, Linda was having a picnic with her son at the nearby park. While Ethan played on the swings, Linda sat on the grass, reflecting on the past 6 months. Her husband's betrayal had been painful, but she was glad to learn the truth. Most importantly, she had been able to protect her son from danger. If she hadn't followed her instincts that night and burned the owl, the surveillance would have continued and might have led to more serious consequences. "Mom, can I play with my new friend Ryan next week?" Ethan ran over to her. "Of course, sweetie. But first I need to talk to Ryan's mother. I know. This time it's a real friend, so there's nothing to hide. Linda hugged her son. Through this experience, she had learned that a real family isn't about blood relations or formalities, but about bonds of trust and mutual protection. A stronger bond than before had formed between her and Ethan. As the sunset painted the park golden, mother and son walked home hand in hand. The difficult period was over, and a new life had begun. Linda was confident that no matter what trials awaited them, she and her son could overcome them together. With the courage to see through to the truth and the determination to protect family, any difficulty could be conquered.